saw over 50,000 students participate and learn in that 1 hour session. We hope each one of you here enjoyed it too. Today, we have packed an even more exciting, enriching, and engaging session. And the instructor over 50,000 students participate and learn in that. And the instructor for today's session is Mrs. Sonia Bareja. She's a professional storyteller and has been teaching creative writing for the past 10 years. Having interacted and taught thousands of kids, she will help us in learning to exercise our creativity to write poems, explore our ideas, and express our thoughts better. We'll request parents and guardians sitting with our little students to help them put any questions or comments that they have in the chat box, and even help them put replies in the chat for any questions or quiz that they can answer during the session. You can find the chat box right below the video if you are accessing it from your mobile phone, or towards the right hand side if you're accessing on your laptop or desktop. So without further ado, let's start with our today's session. Over to you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Himanshu, and welcome you all to this fabulous, exciting Sunday morning where we are going to learn a lot, but everything with a lot of fun. And I promise you, next 60 minutes will be full of fun, but a lot of learning too. But before we begin, I'm sure you all can see me, so let's start with some warm-up. Are you all ready? And if you're ready, keep writing into the chat box because I can see your chats, I can see your comments, and I have my colleagues here who will keep telling me what are you liking and what are you not liking. So feel free to keep writing in the chat comments and keep looking at me and follow my instructions very, very carefully. So now let's start with some warm-up. Show me your two hands. Come on, come on, come on. Open your fingers wide. And let's just get ready to shake them. Shake them up, 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 up. Shake them down, 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 down. Shake them up, 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 up. Shake them down, down, down. Shake them left, left, left. Shake them right, right, right. Shake them left, left, left. Shake them right, right, right. Shake them up, shake them down. Shake them left, shake them right. Now our hands and our arms are nicely warmed up. It's time for our shoulders and our legs. Come on, let's start. Follow me and sing along. Shake them up, up, up. Shake them down, down, down. Shake them up, up, up. Shake them down, down, down. And now it's time to turn our neck. And let's follow it. Turn your neck left, left, left. Turn your neck right, right, right. Turn it left, turn it right. Wow. We're nicely warmed up with our neck. Now it's time to shake and warm up our cheeks because we're going to speak with our mouth. So it's nice and important to warm it up too. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Pull this up, up, up. Pull this down, down, down. Pull it up, up, up. Pull it down, down, down. And one more time. Show me your hands and come on. Let's one last time give it a nice shake. Shake it up, shake it down, shake it left, shake it right. Now, you all are nicely warmed up. If you're nicely warmed up, don't feel hesitant to put a yes or a thumbs up in your comment section. Now, let's start with a very, very interesting finger play song. But for that, I need a few things. And I need a spider. I need rainfall. I need big yellow sun. But, the problem is I don't have a spider. I don't see rainfall. And today there is no sun also. So I need your help because I know that you all have spiders with you. If you're wondering that where is your spider, let me help you. You all have these 2 hands and these 4 fingers. Just open these 4 fingers wide because these 8 fingers, 4 plus 4, these 8 fingers are going to become your creepy, crawly spiders, arms and legs. And we are going to compress them, bring them forward and put your hands close together and follow me and sing along. 1, 2, 3. Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed poor Incy out. Out came the sunshine and dried up all the rain. And Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the spout again. I hope you all followed me and you all got this. Let's do this one more time. Show me your 8 creepy, crawly fingers, because they are the arms and legs of your own spider. We are going to put them together and start with 3, 2, 1. Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed poor Incy out. Out came the sunshine and dried up all the rain. And Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the water spout. Thank you so much for doing it with me. And I hope you like doing it as much as I like doing it with you all. So what I just did is the most ancient and the oldest form of what we call as poetry. Poetry originated way back when prehistoric men would live in caves. जो बहुत पुराने हमारे great grandfathers थे, they would live in caves, and that's the time when they used to write with stones or with whatever came to their hands, and that's how they wrote songs or wrote words. Then somebody gave them music, bam, 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 bam. Somebody gave them some nice sounds, and from there came the rhymes. And what I just did for you and with you was a rhyme. And rhymes are the most ancient form of poetry. So what is a poetry? Basically, poetry is nothing but a piece of writing in which we pour a lot of emotions, a lot of imaginations, and a lot of creativity. Let me show it with the help of a slide. Let's just see the slide here. Yeah. It's right here. It's the language of imaginations, of feelings, our emotions, the way we express and the way we write the poetry, which is musical. And that's why we can remember. And that's why even now at this age, I still remember my twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. You all must be wondering that how do we differentiate a poetry and any other piece of writing, let's say an essay or a chapter book or even a picture book. So how does it differ from poetry? Basically, the difference lies in the way poetry is structured. And the structure of a poem defines that how a poetry is going to be different from other pieces of writing. The first and foremost is that poetry is written in a very imaginative form and a very indirect imagination, whereas any other piece of writing is mostly written in direct language. The second difference is a poetry will most of the time be rhythmic. There'll be a rhythm, there'll be a music to it, whereas a chapter book or a novel or any English literature book or your chapter in your literature books will not be lyrical or rhythmic or musical. And that's why the third difference is that all the poetries can be sung, whereas we can't sing chapters, we can't sing novels, we can't sing picture books, but we can sing all the poems. The other difference is that there is a lot of emotion and figurative speech. Now, what is this figurative speech and how does a poet write a lot of imagination? We'll cover this in today's session. मैं ये आपको सब सिखाने वाली हूँ कि figurative speech क्या होती है, emotions कैसे डाले जाते हैं poetry में. We are going to learn all this today. And the last difference is that poetry is very short. Maximum to maximum, a poetry can cover one page. 1 page, yeah, that's maximum. Whereas a chapter book may comprise of 100 pages, 50 pages, 500 pages, or even 1000 pages. So that's also one big difference between poetry and other pieces of writing. So I hope you have understood this, that what is the main difference between a poetry and other piece of writing. Now, another thing which I want to tell you at this moment is that someone who writes poetry is called as a poet, and someone who writes chapter books or other novels or other books is called as either an author or a writer. So that's also one very important thing to remember. Let me take you to the next slide, which talks about the elements of poetry or poetry structure. What are the structures of poetry? First of all, we'll talk about poetry structure. Now, if I can just stop share here and yeah. So, in terms of the structure of a poem or a poetry, there are 3 main elements. And we all will remember. If you want to write it down, you can write it down. Otherwise, they are very easy. So the three structures of a poem, or 3 things that make the structure of a poem. The first is line break. Now, line break is where the line of, or one single line of a poetry ends. So whenever you write poetry, you write it in the form of lines. And wherever each line ends, that's what the line break is. And it's very important to know our line break in poetry, because that defines how the poem will be read. Now, after first line, you might see that there's a comma, or there's a hyphen, or there's a semicolon, and then the second line ends with a full stop. That makes it one full line. And then the third line will again have a comma or a semicolon or a hyphen, and the fourth line will have a full stop. So that's how the first para, or what is called the next structure, stanza, is comprised of maybe 4 lines. So that's what the line break is. Basically, line breaks allows us to pause and understand how we are going to read the poetry. The second structure is stanza. Stanza is basically a group of lines, and there are a group of lines put together. So a poetry or a poem is composed of few stanzas. It can be 1 stanza, it can be a 2 stanza poem, it can be a 3 stanza poem, or a 4 or a 5 stanza poem. But the beauty is that each stanza of a poem will have same fixed number of lines. So for example, in a poem, the first stanza is of 4 lines, second stanza will also be of 4 lines. So each poem is comprised of lines, and few lines put together makes one stanza, and then therefore each poem is comprised of few stanzas. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4 or more. The third structure of a poem is rhyme. Basically, rhyme is a pattern of words that contain similar sounds. So in a poem, you would have seen that there would be some words which will be either the ending words or the middle words. They will have same kind of sounds. Can you think of any poem that would tell you or that would remind you of rhyme, line break or stanza? While you're thinking, let me read a very quick birthday poem or a very nicely written funny poem. It goes like this. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as pig, cow or duck. So that's the first stanza. I'm going to read it again. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as pig, cow or duck. So the first line is today on your birthday. Line break is after birthday. So there is a comma. The second line is consider your luck, full stop, which means the first full line is today on your birthday, consider your luck. The third line is you could have been born as, comma. The fourth line is a pig, cow or duck, full stop, which means that it's one stanza comprises of 4 lines. And the rhyme is luck and duck. This poem also has a second stanza. Let's read that. You could have been born crying oink, quack or moo. You are lucky you didn't wind up in the zoo. Let me read it again. You could have been born crying oink, quack or moo. You are lucky you didn't wind up in the zoo. So again, 4 lines and the second stanza. The rhyming word is moo and zoo. So let me read it again. Let me read the full poem again for you to understand these 3 important structures: line break, stanza, and rhyme. So it goes like this. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as a pig, cow or duck. You could have been born crying oink, quack or moo. You are lucky you didn't wind up in the zoo. There goes the 3 structures or 3 elements of structure of a poem. Let's go further. If there is any question, keep writing it in the chat box, and I have my colleague who will stop me and who will ask me that, oh, you've not understood this, or you want me to tell you this again. Keep putting your comments, keep putting your questions in the chat box. I hope I'm going at the right pace and you're understanding and you're enjoying. Because now we're going to talk about few more elements of a poem which are very, very important for us to understand. When I was saying that a poem is written with a lot of emotion and a lot of creativity and imagination and indirect imagination, there are few things a poet uses as tools, and these tools are called as elements of a poetry. The first one is metaphor. The first word is that a poet very, very commonly uses a term called as metaphor. Now, metaphor is something when there is an indirect comparison between 2 things. It's not direct comparison, but it's an indirect comparison which is implied, which is sometimes difficult to understand, but poets uses it very, very commonly. Let me give you an example. Sometimes if somebody is very indifferent towards things or cold-hearted, indifferent, the poet would say that she has a heart of stone. So it's an indirect comparison because heart can never be made of stone. But yes, because the stone is very hard and it doesn't get affected easily, that's why the poet has the liberty to say her stone is like, she has a heart of stone, or her stone is of heart, whichever way the poet wants to say. All the world's a stage is also a metaphor, where the world is compared to being a stage, whereas in reality it is not a stage, but the way it is connected, the way it is compared is implied. It's an indirect way of putting it. So the word for this is metaphor. The second element of, or the poetic tool, is simile. Simile is where there's a direct comparison between 2 things, and it is done with the help of words such as like or as. So either the poet will use the word like, or the poet will use the word as, such as as. One example which is coming to my mind is, my love for you is like red rose. Yeah? The surface of water is as smooth as glass. So where there's a direct comparison and the poet uses the term as or like, is a simile. The first one was metaphor. The second one is simile. Now we are going to do the third one, which is alliteration. What is it called? Alliteration. Alliteration is basically very easy, where the phonic sound, the phonetics of 2 or more words is same, where the phonics, the sound of the first alphabet of a word, neighboring words, is same. For example, I wrote one example from a poem which is called Peter Piper Picked a Pack of Black Peppers. So Peter Piper picked a pack of peppers. So the sound of these neighboring words is P, P, P. And the poet has nicely used alliteration. And it helps us to remember. Lots of nursery rhymes and many poems for children in class 1, class 2, class 3, or even in class 4, they use these tools because it makes for the children easier to remember the poems. The fourth tool that poet uses is personification. Personification is basically when an inanimate object, a non-living object, is compared with a human quality. It's a non-living object, but it's compared with a human quality. For example, when the poet is writing about a knight, he might just say the knight was creeping on the ground. Now, creeping, crawling is used for living creatures like a snake or a lizard or insects. The knight was creeping on the ground. So the first one was metaphor, simile, alliteration, and the fourth is, what did we just do? Alliteration. I hope you're understanding because we are going to do a lot more examples on these tools. Don't worry. The next is repetition. Repetition is where one particular word is repeated to sound like a rhyme. Yeah, we just did an example where we talked about this particular poem. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. So these are rhyming words. These are rhyming words or repetition words, the words which are repeated to give a interesting pattern to a poem. In fact, the repetition as a tool defines a very important thing in a poem that's called the rhyming scheme of the poem. It's very important for us to know what is a rhyming scheme. Now, repetition of the words decides what is the rhyming scheme. Let's take the same example. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. So what do you think is the rhyming scheme? Rhyming scheme is if the first line is A, the second line is B, the third line is C. Now in the fourth line, the same word is repeated which is there in the second line. So the name for the fourth line will be B. So the rhyming scheme for this particular poem will be A, B, C, B. Let me explain this again. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. That's line A and line B. And line C would be, you could have been born as C. Fourth line is a pig, cow, or duck. Because the sound of the fourth line's last word is similar to the sound of the last word of the second line, that's why it will be named same. So the rhyming scheme is decided on the words that are repeated or the pattern in which the words are repeated in a poem. So in this short poem, the scheme is A, B, C, B. If anybody has a question till now, can definitely ask me or put it in the chat or put it in the comments.
So we're receiving a lot of comments, like hundreds of comments. Kids are really, really excited and happy. And a couple of kids have, given some examples. So Darian Revel and Dishar Dev, they've given very similar examples of metaphors and wanted to confirm. So Darian says, he is a lion in the battle. Is it a metaphor? And
Yes.
Disha says, she's brave as a lion. So both of
she's
them.
brave as a lion is simile because there is a direct comparison by the usage of word as. So when a poet uses a word as in the comparison or uses a word like in the comparison, then it becomes a simile, because then he's directly comparing. But if it is an indirect comparison, then it's a metaphor. All the world's a stage is a metaphor.
Great, great. Hope it's clear, Darian and Disha. Asha Rani says, please, ma'am, if you can show the stanza on the screen while you're saying it out, it will be helpful. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I can quickly type it in a chat box if you want, because I don't have it in the slide. You want me to write it in the chat box? I can do that.
No worries. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, I can
Kanchan
do
says, Kanchan's asking, what is imagery?
I'm going to come that. I still haven't come to imagery, but that's a good question.
Okay, great.
I'm
All
just
right.
writing it for you to, or today on your birthday. Let me write it fully. Today on your birthday, comma, consider. वो स्टैंजा की फॉर्म में चैट में आएगा नहीं वैसे. Consider
We'll
your.
do that. Sonia, I think
Should I
we'll
just go ahead?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Himanshu. If you can just type these 4 lines and just maybe if you
Do
can
that.
share it on a Word document in between or towards the end of the session. So we've covered. Can you quickly start writing it on the chat box if you all have learned these 5-6 tools that we have just talked? Come on, start writing. The first one we did was metaphor. The second one we did was a simile. The third one we did was alliteration. The fourth one we did was personification. Did we do personification? Yes, where the human qualities are compared with inanimate objects. The fifth one we did was repetition. And with repetition, we talked about rhyming scheme, and that's very important. And the last one we talked about was rhythm, which is about how the beat is. So rhythm and repetition goes hand in hand, because the repetition of the poem words would determine what the rhythm of the poem would be. Now, last is imagery. Imagery is an important tool given to a poet where he or she has the liberty to use words that evokes any of our senses, any of our sense organs, whether it could be seeing, hearing, taste, touch, any. But we are going to cover imagery like in the last segment of today's session. Before that, I wanted to give you a couple of more examples on these 6 tools, because it's very, very important for each one of you to understand these 6 tools very clearly, so that when we meet next time, we are in a position to write poetry. But before that, before I give further examples, should we just go to a little quiz section? Himanshu, can we just
Sure.
do that?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I have my first question on the slide. A poet is option A, the person who writes poetry. Option B, the person who reads the poem. Option C, the person who draws in a poem. Whosoever knows the right answer, please quickly type it in the chat. And Himanshu will tell me if somebody has got the right answer.
Yes, absolutely. Kids, everybody, please, parents, could you please help type in the right answer on behalf of kids? We're receiving a lot of positive feedback in the meantime, Sonia. Like
Great.
people
That's
from,
nice.
so there's Pallavi Thakur, first class, Mount Moriah International School from Himachal Pradesh. She says it's a great instruction that you're giving.
Thank you.
Sufyan Akil, class 2B, and Abdullah Akil, class SKG, are thanking you. A lot of interesting feedback. So we're receiving a lot of responses in the chat. There is Aisha Mahajan, option A, Padmini Sarvanan, option A,
Option A.
Gopal Malik, Sandhya Rani, Yug Pratap Singh. Everyone's giving option A as the answer.
Option A is the correct answer. So please give yourself a big round of applause. And don't worry, we have a surprise for all the children who are giving the right answers. And Himanshu is going to announce it towards the end of the session, that all the children who have given the right answers, what is going to happen to them. My next question is, what are the various elements of poetry from the following options? Option A, stanza, lines, and paragraph. Option B, plot, paragraphs, and characters. Option C, stanza, rhythm, alliteration, and repetition. So quickly open your chat box, type the answer, and let's see who all have the right answer.
Sure. Parents, again, please help the kids give the right answer. A lot of you are typing option A, then there are option C. So there's Anjali Sharma, option C, Jisha Shaju, option A. There's Dilip Ubga, option A, Vaibhav Kulkarni, option C, Rajni Roy, option C, Preeti S. Methi, option C, Santosh Santi, option C. A lot of people are
Okay,
typing option
so
C.
option C is the correct answer. But since couple of you have also written option 1, option A as the answer, but let me tell you, I never use the word paragraph for poetry. I said there are lines and a fixed number of lines make a stanza, and then I said there is rhythm, there is rhyme. We also talked about alliteration as one of the tools. So paragraphs are not part of poetry. Paragraphs are part of story books. Like poetry is written in stanzas, paragraphs are the elements or the structure for storybooks. So when you read novels, when you read chapter books, there are small paragraphs, and in any chapter or in any book there are multiple number of paragraphs. We don't even count. But in a poem we count the number of stanzas. So it could be, there can't be a poetry necessarily doesn't have like 200 stanzas, but a book or even a chapter can have like 200 to 500 paragraphs. So option C is the correct answer according to me. Yes. So I'll also get some reward for giving the right answer. Yes. Now, before we go further, let me stop share here and come back to quickly giving you more examples before we go to imagery part of our segment. The first example is of alliteration, and I'm giving you this example by reading some poetry for you to understand what this tool means one last time. We talked about alliteration. So there is, again I'm repeating, it's the repetition of the phonics of 2 or 3 neighboring words. We all know this famous nursery rhyme which says, Betty bought some butter, but she said the butter's bitter. It's also a tongue twister. So here the sound or the phonic of the letter B is repeated. So B is coming in almost all the words. The second is metaphor, where we talked that there's an indirect comparison and the comparison is implied too, where, let me just read this small piece of the poem which says, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids and all in the row. So here the metaphor is comparing flowers to pretty maids, and it is sometimes not very easy to understand, but the pretty maids is not basically the human maids or the domestic help or anything, but when the poet says, with silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row, he's talking about the flowers in a row. The next one, we talked about personification, where we said that there is a comparison of an inanimate or a non-living object with a human quality. We all know this famous rhyme, hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon, the little dog laughed to see such a spot, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Now imagine yourself that can a dish and spoon run? But the poet has a liberty to say this because he has this nice tool called personification. The next one is repetition, where we said the words, the phrases, the sounds are repeated. We can see this in this following example. Once I saw a little bird come hop, hop, hop. So I cried, little bird, will you stop, stop, stop. So these are rhyming words, repeated words, and they give a very, very nice flavor to our poem. Rhyme scheme, I just said that the way words are repeated determines the rhyming scheme. Let's see through this very old poem that we all know. Hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock struck one and down he run, hickory dickory dock. So here, if you really, after the session, if you write down this poem, or if you open your old book, or from your memory, if you write down these 5 lines, your first line will be A, where the last word is dock. Hickory dickory dock, A. The second line is the mouse went up the clock. So the sounds are repeated. So the second line will also be A. The third line is the clock struck 1 and down he run. So these third and the fourth line will be named as B, B, because the sound is repeated. 1, run. 1 is rhyming with run. So the scheme of the poem is, rhyming scheme of the poem is A, B, B. In fact, now when you'll go back to school, especially class 1, 2, 3, 4, the children from these classes, this will definitely be a question in your comprehensions, or in a chapter which is a poem, where the teacher will ask you to understand or to define what is the rhyming scheme in this particular poem. And since today you're learning all this, you'll be one step ahead in your class. You can easily tell where the poet is using a metaphor, where he's using a personification, where is he using alliteration, and now where is he using the simile. Where we also said that simile is direct comparison. A word such as or like is used. We know this age-old rhyme. Mary had a little lamb with a fleece as white as snow. Mary had a little lamb with a fleece as white as snow. So he's used the word as white as snow. There he's using simile. So your teacher will ask you a question that in this poem, what or which poetic tool has the poet used, or which element of the poetry has been used in this stanza. So very smartly now you all will reply that here the poet is using a simile, because he is comparing it by using the word as white as snow. So I think I have covered all the elements, and now we are ready to go back to our next topic, which is the language of the poetry, where he uses, oh, where did I go? Oh, did I miss? Did I lose you, Himanshu?
No. Right there.
Okay, one second. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the language of the poetry, which has been given a name, and that's called imagery. And I briefly mentioned that imagery is basically something, or the use of such words that evokes any of our senses, and basis that there is a name for each sense that is evoked by the poet. But before I go further, can somebody please help me by writing in the chat box what are the 5 senses we have? Quickly. And I would just hear from Himanshu that yes, they have nicely written.
Sure.
Come on, quickly write, I'm waiting. And I'm just stop sharing it because I want to speak to you directly like this. I hope they would have written it by now.
Yeah, a lot of kids.
Has everybody written five senses?
There's Selva, there's Shubhajit Mishra who's writing, Dilip. A lot of people are giving good feedback as well.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of students have started writing.
Good. So that means we all know that we have 5 senses, because these 5 senses basically defines the imagery. So the first one is visual. Now visual is something where the poet uses some words which we can see, we can feel that we are seeing those words. Let me quickly give you an example where the poet has written a line, the sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. Each and every word has been chosen so specifically to evoke our sense of seeing, that we can almost see that the sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. So everything comes in front of us as if we are there. We are witnessing the sea. We are seeing the sun shining. So that's how the poet takes the liberty of evoking our visual sense. So that's the first part of imagery. The second part is tactile. These are nice words. By using these words, you can impress your classmates. You can be one step ahead in your class. Your teachers would love when you'll use these words. So don't get scared of these words. They are very easy, they are very simple, but they are new. And they are very, very fancy words. So tactile is something where the poet uses some words which evokes our sense of touch. For example, through the green twilight of a hedge, I peered with cheek on the cool leaves pressed. I'll say this again. Through the green twilight of a hedge, I peered with cheek on the cool leaves pressed. I peered with cheek on the cool leaves pressed. When the poet uses these nice words, it almost makes us feel that we are pressing our cheek through that grass or through those things. So your sense is evoked, and here which sense is evoked? The touch, the sense of touch. And the word, a fancy word for that is tactile. So first one was visual. The second one is tactile. The third is auditory. Auditory is basically where the poet uses some words which evokes our sense of hearing. And here we have a very interesting example to give you. And before I give the example, the poet, when he or she uses the sound or the auditory sense in form of an imagery, it is called as onomatopoeia. Now that's a little difficult word, but a very fancy word. I love this word called onomatopoeia. Now onomatopoeia is the sound, the word of a sound in a poetry. Listen to this example. Bow says the dog, mew mew says the cat, grunt grunt goes the hog, and squeak goes the rat. So that's a little poetry where the poet has used the sound of that particular animal. And that sound word has a name which is called onomatopoeia. So when the poet uses onomatopic words or onomatopoeia in the poetry, that evokes our auditory organs. Let's do this once again. Bow says the dog, mew mew says the cat, grunt grunt goes the hog, and squeak goes the rat. And that's the reason why right from the childhood we grow up listening to things that a dog says bow bow, a cat says meow, a cow says moo. So these are onomatopic words. If you can just say it, I'll wait for 2 seconds, I'll stop, say it. If you have any difficulty in saying it, just ask me on the chat and I'm going to write it for you. Or maybe Himanshu, if you can just write down the word onomatopoeia in the chat box, it'll be good for them.
Yeah,
because it's
in
a
fact,
big...
in fact, Bhavik Patel, thanks a lot, Bhavik, because he wrote the word and helped describe onomatopoeia for everybody in the chat box.
That's very good.
Yeah, Niharika is saying you have some doubt. Niharika, please do type in the chat box. We are here to explain everything.
Yeah. We'll take the questions towards the end, maybe.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for writing in the word, because I know personally it's a long word and it has a very tricky spelling, because sometimes even I have to kind of see the spellings and I do some errors sometimes, which is possible, which is okay. As long as we know how it is used, what is the meaning of this word, it's okay. Because poetry also allows us to go a little ungrammatical. Sometimes you'll read poetry when you'll grow now. For example, from class 1, when you go to class 2, from class 2 to class 3, you will see that, oh, there is a grammatical error, but a poet has a liberty to go ungrammatical. Moving on further from auditory to olfactory. Olfactory is, which is the smell. They suggest the smell of the things, where your nose as a sense organ is evoked by reading those words. Let me just give you an example. As mommy washed up and the children played, Smell of warm butter filled the air. So, how smartly and how nicely the poet has written this. Smell of warm butter filled the air. And we suddenly go, our nose and our auditory organ suddenly gets activated, and we start to smell the fresh melted butter. That's the power of words when a poet writes. The last but not the least, or maybe last two, is kinesthetic. Again, a fancy big word. Kinesthetic refers to wherever there is an action or a motion. When a poet uses an imagery where he or she is talking about something moving or something is in the action. Let's read few lines to understand. A poem once stopped me on the street. I've got a poem stuck on my feet. A poem attacked me in the shower. I find a poem every hour. Isn't this a cute poem? If you want, I can share this on the screen next time when we meet. But I personally find this particular example very nice. It says, I'll read it again for you all. A poem once stopped me on the street. I've got a poem stuck on my feet. A poem attacked me in the shower. I find a poem every hour. Where in these words, the poet has very funnily, in a humor way, has used or activated the kinesthetics. It almost makes us feel that poem is moving, poem has got feet. It is moving me, it is meeting me everywhere. So that's the power of poet's words. Last but not the least is again a fancy word called gustatory. Gustatory is where the poet activates our sense of taste, where the words are written in such a way that they activate or evoke, as we say, our sense of taste of things. Let's read the example. A mouse found a beautiful piece of plum cake, the richest and the sweetest that Marshall could make. 'Twas heavy with citron and fragrant with spice, and covered with sugar, all sparkling as ice. If I were to use this example, there is definitely gustatory, there is definitely taste, but there are two more things that are being used in this poem. I'm going to give a pause here, but before that, I'm going to read, and I want you to tell me what are the other two important things that have been used. I'll read this again. Listen to this carefully. A mouse found a beautiful piece of plum cake, the richest and sweetest that Marshall could make. 'Twas heavy with citron and fragrant with spice, and covered with sugar, all sparkling as ice. So my question is, when the poet says, 'twas heavy with citron and fragrant with spice, what is the other sense that has got evoked? Fragrant with spice. Quickly write it in the chat box, and Himanshu could help me if somebody has the right answer.
Sure.
When the poet has used the word fragrant with spice.
Yeah. Waiting for your responses, kids.
Which imagery, which sense organ is evoked when he's saying fragrant with spice?
Yeah. So GC K. Shulu says gustatory. Money says all of them. Nose, ears, eyes, mouth, tongue.
Nose. Somebody who has written nose, which is olfactory, is the correct answer, because when you say fragrant with spice, you're smelling the fragrance. You always smell the fragrance. You never taste the fragrance. You taste the flavor. Yeah. Whenever we taste something, we say flavor. But when we smell, we say fragrance. Yes.
Lot of kids have given the right. Good. Anusha, Rosa, Rose, Vijay.
Super. Yeah. My second question is, when he has said covered with sugar, all sparkling as ice, which tool has he used here? Write it in the chat. Covered with sugar, all sparkling as ice. We just read and talked about it.
Kids, we're waiting for your responses. Someone says Olfactory, someone says.
No, not the imagery. I'm asking, my question here is which poetic tool, like a metaphor or simile or an alliteration. The line is covered with sugar, all sparkling as ice. So जहाँ पे as ice use किया है, वहाँ पे क्या tool use हुआ है?
Yeah, so a lot
If
of
anybody could tell
vegetarians
me.
say simile, Radhika says simile.
Good, good, good. That means these
Munnar,
children are very intelligent. They're
yeah,
listening to me very carefully. Yes,
Munnar,
simile is the right answer.
yeah.
Simile is the right answer. Let me take you back to the share screen and see if we have covered all of them. Yes, we have covered all of them. Are you ready for some one or two quiz questions? Let's see if we have. Yes, we have covered this language. Yes. Okay, my first question is, what are the following types of words called as? Love glove, run fun, mouse house. Write it in the chat.
Right, kids, you have the question in front of you. We're waiting for your responses. What are the following types of words called as? Someone's saying simile, alliteration.
No.
No, we.
Think about it carefully. These are part of our tools as well as our structure when we talked about structure. Like we said, hickory dickory dock, the mouse went up the clock. So, dock and clock, love and glove, run and fun, mouse and house. What are these words? Has anybody got the right answer? Okay, the word starts with R. I'm giving you a clue.
Yeah, Charita saying rhyming words. Rosemary saying rhyming words. Kamal rhyming.
Well, that's an absolutely correct answer. Thank you so much. I have another question, I think. Yes. Which of these following is not an example of rhyming scheme in a poetry? Listen to the question carefully. It's a tricky question. Which of the following is not an example of rhyme scheme in a poetry? AABB, AABBA, ABCD. Now, think about it and carefully choose the answer.
All right, kids, you have the options. Kanta Rajput says B. Sivol says B. Sia is saying B. Thaju is saying C. Jisha is saying C. Surender is saying option C.
Any who is saying, yeah, anybody who's saying C is the correct answer. Let me explain this to you last time, that a rhyming scheme means that few words, last words of your line rhymes with the last word of any other line. So it could be the first and the second line, it could be the first and the third line, it could be the first and the fifth line also. But it would be rhyming only if the words will have a same sound. Now, what you see or observe in A, B, C, D is all the four words or four lines are ending with separate sounding words. So, there is definitely no rhyming scheme. So, A, B, C, D is definitely not the example of a rhyming scheme. Well, that was my question. I have another one. What is the most old form of poetry?
Right, kids, you have this question. We talked about this right in the beginning of the session.
Yeah. Option A, songs. Option B, prose. Option C, rhymes and lullaby. Okay, that's a very easy one. Which, according to you, is the most old form of poetry? Okay.
So Sankar Roy is saying C. Ravi is saying C.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. Rhymes and lullaby. I also gave you an example when the caveman gave sound and music and rhyme to the songs they were composing. That gave birth to rhymes and lullaby. I
Yeah.
think that's where we finish today's session, Himanshu.
Yeah. Just to
We
add,
are open for, we still have
yeah,
some time. We have questions.
absolutely. And just to add, like hundreds of students are giving options. We are not able to read the names of so many students, but like, yeah, almost everybody is getting the right answers, which is really great.
Yeah.
And kids, we are open to questions. Sonia is here for a couple of more minutes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type in the chat box. We'll just take it up.
And Himanshu, is it possible for us to write down the names of these children who have responded with the right answers when we start the second session on 20th? If
Yes, yes,
technically it's
absolutely.
possible. Uh,
Absolutely. Yes, we will
yeah.
do it.
So, children, that's an added advantage for you to be there in the second session because we'll be starting off with your names being displayed on the screen. All those who have given right answers to any of the questions today.
Yeah, there'll
So
be
that's
hundreds of
great.
names. We'll
Now,
try and pick up as many names as possible. But yeah, please,
yeah,
please, please keep typing in answers. And yeah, I mean, we're open to questions. Please, give in your questions if you have any questions. Kanchan, I hope your question about what is imagery is answered now. Uh, Super, getting a lot of very good feedback. Kids, thank you.
great.
But I mean, we are here for any questions that you have. What is rhyming words? Yeah, maybe Sonia, I think if you could just maybe share the screen, the presentation, in case
Yeah,
anybody wants to note
sure,
down.
sure. I don't mind. That's right here. And let's just go to the first slide.
Prakash is
Yeah.
asking, ma'am, what is line break? If you can quickly
Yeah,
explain.
I can quickly say line break is where your line ends, and that is what determines how you will read your poem. Like I said, the first line will have a comma or a semicolon or a hyphen. Then the second line will have a full stop. So that makes a complete line. Today on your birthday, consider your luck. That's your first full line. But the line break happened towards the end of each line. You could have been born as a pig, cow, or duck. That's your third and fourth line. So, this is what we covered, what is poetry and how it is different from the other pieces of writing. We covered it in length, detail. Then we talked about elements of poetry and structure. Structure is comprised of three things: line breaks, stanza, and rhyme. The elements are metaphor, simile, imagery, personification, repetition, alliteration. I insist and I urge each one of you to read about these elements. Talk to your parents who have been present in the session today to learn it further, remember it further. And when you meet me next week, same time, I am open and I will be open to taking your questions even in the second class. Maybe we will spend the first 5 minutes on taking up your questions before moving to the next level of our session. So don't hesitate. These are some things where you are investing your time and effort. So feel free to ask as many questions as you wish to.
Yeah, a lot
So,
of questions coming up. I mean, Reshma is wanting to know how do you start a poem? Maybe in the next session we can try and answer.
yes, we are. The next session, I don't know if you allow me, Himanshu, maybe we can reveal what we are covering the next session.
Sure. I mean, we'll share it with the kids after this. Uh,
Sure. Because we
Definitely.
have something very exciting coming up in the second session. Today you have learned the basic building blocks. In the next session, you'll be learning how to create, like they say, now how to create a building, or how do you really learn to make a complete Lego. So you none of you can miss the next session. Then we talked about language of poetry, which is imagery, and this is what we did today. Yeah, can I stop share, Himanshu?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And kids, if any of the questions we weren't able to answer, we'll definitely sort out from the comments from the chat box, and we'll take it up in the next session for sure.
Sure, sure.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, parents and guardians, for being with kids for the entire duration. We really hope you enjoyed the last 1 hour. You had a lot of learning, a lot of fun, and we really hope you would be able to kind of think about it. And any questions that come up, just type in here. We will answer it in the beginning of the next session. Thank you, everybody, once again. Have a very good rest of the week.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I loved spending this nice 1 hour with you and telling you some interesting things, learning some interesting things from you. And I'll be eagerly waiting to meet you all and a lot, many more next Sunday. So thank you so much.
Next Sunday,
Thanks,
same
Himanshu.
time, 11 a.m. Next Sunday, same time. See you all very soon. Take care.
Bye bye. Thank you so much, Himanshu. Are we good to go?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye bye.